competition keeps prices down far more effectively.
As long as suffering of sentient being remains, I will remain in order to serve.
I imagined God like my grandfather.
In conversation this evening, my guest is the International President of the Theosophical Society. She's acted in Jean Renoir's The River, has a postgraduate degree in Sanskrit, and was the first graduate in classical dance from Kalakshetra. I'm delighted to welcome Radha Burnier.
Thank you.
What is Theosophy?
The word literally means divine wisdom. But then the question is, what is divine wisdom? Perhaps we can begin by seeing that there is a great distinction between wisdom and knowledge. There are people who have an immense amount of knowledge in different fields. Religious knowledge, that means knowledge of scriptures rather, and scriptural traditions, knowledge in the different fields of science, knowledge which is philosophical, and so on and so forth. But these people may not be wise people. They may not even know how to be happy in their family, what relationship to have with nature or with one's neighbors. They may be creating confusion around them, hurting people physically or psychologically, doing harm. So knowledge does not necessarily go with right living. Rightness being in being able to create harmony, happiness, an inner well-being, leading to greater spiritual awareness. So wisdom is a different kind of knowledge.
How is wisdom arrived at?
That is a very great question. To go back to the first question, we could say that theosophy is the art of living, that mode of living which brings about the best in the human being.
What are some of the elements of this mode of living? What are the techniques that bring out this best?
I think one must be aware that what we consider as real is what makes us act as we do. If money is very real or the most real thing to a person, then he is out to compete, to crush people, to do all sorts of things in order to accumulate money. It may be billions which he cannot use, but still he will do that because money in his eyes has a reality. But if money doesn't have reality, or suppose he is going to crash down from an aeroplane, and then at that moment he realizes all that he has accumulated has no value at all, which has happened to people, that kind of thing.
But the knowledge of this, when does it translate into wisdom? When does knowledge become wisdom?
No, I'm trying to say that.
Okay.
Then the values become different and the mode of living becomes different. And one can either be aware of value in something or not be aware of it. What is the value of a flower? It may be purely commercial, or as Tennyson wrote in his poem on a flower in the crannied wall, it may open the consciousness to something far beyond oneself, which you see God in that flower, in which case your whole attitude to that flower, or let us say a person, or to the entire universe, would be very different. So what you see is what makes you act. So the next question is, how do you see clearly? So we can't say how do you come to wisdom without coming to this question. How do we learn to see what is deep inside something? And obviously there is something deep, because take a mother who looks at her child. The child may misbehave, may become deformed, yet she is able to perceive something which is profoundly valuable. So it is more in one's consciousness. This is why religions have taught that you must purify your consciousness. As long as there is self-will, ambition, desire, self-importance and so on, that distorts perception. And therefore the mind must be cleansed.
So are there specific techniques and practices that the Theosophical Society and the movement recommends for this cleansing of the mind and the consciousness?
No, the Theosophical Society doesn't give specific instructions of that kind, because it encourages people of all persuasions, whether they are Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or whatever it is, to find out for themselves what appeals to them, what becomes naturally inspiring to them. Because in each of these areas, if a person delves deep, he or she can find out what is helpful and what is not, and what is useful to one person may not be so useful to another person. But I would say in all of them there is the question of expanding one's power of self-observation and self-awareness. Without that, it is not possible.
When you join the Theosophical movement, do you stop being a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever your belief systems are? Is this something that sort of adds to it?
Not at all. The people are free to follow something or not to follow anything. They may be agnostics or atheists also, but they have to be interested in human welfare and subscribe to the most essential object of the Theosophical Society, which is to accept the universal brotherhood of humanity and in fact of all living beings. That means purifying the mind of every kind of bias. Bias comes easily into the mind, and children are taught to become prejudiced. A small child doesn't know whether its companion comes from a rich family or a poor family, but the child is very soon conditioned to become aware of it and to despise one who is poor or to think much of one who is rich. You know, there are innumerable kinds of prejudices of this kind. To be really brotherly, loving, friendly means the mind must hold on to no bias of that kind. So no barriers are created in the mind. So that is fundamental in the Theosophical Society.
You know, we tend to associate the Theosophical Society with two great names, Annie Besant and J. Krishnamurti for a while. Annie Besant was also very politically active in the early part of the century, in the freedom movement. What does the Theosophical Society today practice that kind of activism?
Annie Besant was not a politician. I think I must say this. She took an interest in India's political freedom because she felt that India had a spiritual message to give to the world. In fact, the world could be regenerated by this inheritance that Indians have had, and that to do that, political freedom was necessary. the situation is not the same today. So the Theosophical Society does not have to enter into politics. It has never been political as a society. She was individually, as a private person, doing that work. I think what is needed today is a moral awakening, without which even talk of spirituality has no meaning. And members of the Theosophical Society are, of course, deeply engaged in this.
How large is your membership?
The membership is not large. I think worldwide it is about 35,000, because the society has never tried to recruit members. It's not interested in showing large numbers. What we are interested is in making people ponder over these things. What is a relationship? How can the world go from a state of conflict and misery to one of peace and understanding? So as long as we carry on programs which will help people to think over these things, perhaps bring about a change in themselves, it doesn't matter too much whether the membership is very large or not. Suppose we had 1 million members who are selfish. The society may become a harmful institution instead of being one which will help the world.
What was J. Krishnamurti's relationship with the Theosophical Society?
You know, he was a ward of Annie Besant. To the end of his life, he loved her and admired her. In my personal opinion, for whatever it was worth, he had a feeling for the main objects of the society, particularly the aim of bringing about an undivided world, not only politically undivided, but more deeply. But the Theosophical Society went through a period when certain fanciful ideas were introduced, which for him were quite incompatible with what he wanted to do.
Such as the hailing of a new Messiah. Was that?
No. Such as emphasis on initiations and talk about personal progress and all that kind of thing.
Is this Theosophical Society sort of waiting or anticipating another Messiah?
No, not at all.
That notion?
And the Theosophical Society officially never had such a policy. It was Annie Besant who was deeply convinced that great spiritual influence would pour down through Krishnamurti. Even before Krishnamurti was discovered, so to speak, she was speaking about this, and she thought it was the influence of the Lord Maitreya, who is said to be the successor of Gautama Buddha. But she was very deeply convinced that Krishnamurti was going to bring that influence. They never said he was the Messiah, only a vehicle for that influence, that teaching, if you like.
At that phase, there was also, and before that, there has been the influence of Madame Blavatsky and sort of the more metaphysical practices, shall we say. How much of that still prevails as a part of, teaching, the recommendation, or the practice of the order or its members?
I don't think there were more metaphysical practices earlier than there are today. Hand in hand with the general, let me say, the exoteric work of the society, which is to bring about greater understanding and, as we said, helping people to shed the barriers, psychological barriers they have built up within themselves. There has always been within the society a core group of people who are interested in bringing about that kind of radical transformation within, from a freedom from the psychological and other limitations that the human being has, which Krishnamurti called a revolution. There has always been a group like that, and there is still...
What are these? I mean, I don't want to sort of intrude in the confidentiality of this, but what are the kinds of esoteric practices, and to what end? Do you sort of, visualize spirits? Do you see consciousness in matter? Do you see something beyond the realm of immediate appearances or our sensory perceptions? What is the process, and what is the goal of this process?
Well, the goal is that the consciousness should move from the dimension of self-centeredness, selfishness, to that of universal benevolence and to a state of real goodness from a spiritual point of view. The goal is very clear. It's the same goal. The goal is the same in all true spiritual practice. But in the Theosophical Society, this kind of imagining all kinds of visions and spirits is positively discouraged, because whatever we imagine comes from a conditioned mind. In fact, the mind must be freed, become empty of all those imaginings, and when it is in a pristine state, whatever is true may well up from within. Many great spiritual teachers have said the kingdom of happiness is within you, the truth is within you. It is the Christ consciousness within you. It is the Buddha nature which is within you. So you have to make room for it, open up a place for it, create a sanctuary for it.
So what are some of these, we're just saying, using the word esoteric, what are some of these esoteric assumptions? I mean, I respect the practice and the privacy and the confidentiality of it, but what are some of these assumptions that you make?
I don't quite understand what you mean by assumptions.
I mean, in the sense that you come from the notion or the idea that matter has a form of consciousness. Now, in terms of ordinary scientific empirical understanding of matter, that is not how we would explain this.
No, that isn't true. Yes, perhaps from the ordinary average point of view.
Right.
From the theosophical point of view, it is not that matter has some form of consciousness, but all is consciousness. The scientists say that the matter is only congealed energy. It's basically energy. Well, from a spiritual point of view, basically everything is consciousness and part of an undivided universal consciousness, transcendental consciousness. Some scientists are now coming to it. Recently, a book has been published by an Indian scientist teaching in the United States, Professor Amit Goswami. And the title of his book is The Self-Aware Universe. And he says that the questions which have come up in quantum physics now cannot be solved except by assuming that consciousness is a substratum of everything. So science is moving that way. There are other scientists who are inclined to move that way. So that would be...
Do you believe in other forms of, like in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, you have the notion of deities, you have the notion of spirits and forms, of beings, if I can loosely describe them, other than merely the human. Do you have notions of different layers of existence and being?
I must emphasize again that the Theosophical Society doesn't officially say yes or no to any of those things. But I may say that most members of the society would go along with the idea that there are many levels of existence. After all, the range of our sense perceptions and even of our mental perceptions is very, very limited. There are subtle, intangible levels of existence. Even from the scientific point of view, there are fields of energy, fields of force. Sheldrake, for example, speaks about the morphogenetic field, which nobody can see. All these exist, and there may be still deeper dimensions of existence. and forms of existence. There may be intelligences at various levels. You can call them deities if you like. You can imagine symbolic forms. After all, if there is a deity holding a sword, that may not actually be a sword, but it symbolizes something. So the energies, the intelligences which exist in the world are personified.
Are they accessible to you and me?
Surely all the levels are connected together. There are no frontiers, so to speak, except what we create by our own limitations.
So how do we access them? Through practices,
Through
techniques?
refining and sensitizing our own responses, our physical body, our emotions, our thoughts, every part of oneself has to become of the finest order.
Tell me that one of the things that I remember about Annie Besant was her disagreeing with Gandhiji on his sort of policies and his approach of non-cooperation with the government, and her feeling that it might be worth waiting longer for India's independence rather than creating a disrespect for authority and institutions and structures, which was an ethic or a worldview which would spill over beyond independence, and in some ways has perhaps for India. How far do you think our historical experience has validated her position?
I think she was very far-sighted. She had a lot of political experience, and she had spiritual insights, and she has been proven right. What she said was that it was all right for a person of Mr. Gandhi's caliber to break the law, and he could remain non-violent under great provocation. But she said millions of people, the masses, could not possibly do what Gandhi did. And so once you taught them to disrespect the law and to take everything into their own hands, it would be uncontrollable later. And this is what is happening now. Today in our country, unfortunately, we see people taking law into their own hands in so many ways, and so much destruction is taking place, so much indiscipline, irresponsibility, because they don't feel part of a coherent whole.
What strategy then, how might Annie Besant have suggested Gandhiji or whoever was leading the movement do things differently?
I think she was absolutely in favor of demonstrating against particular laws which were iniquitous, but not against law as a whole. So she was in favor, on the whole, of fighting for political freedom through constitutional means.
Tell me, what was your experience, and I honestly don't remember your specific role in Renoir's The River. How did that happen to you? How did you end up acting in a movie?
The words "end up" is quite correct. Well, it happened that I gave a performance at the annual convention of the Theosophical Society. That year it was held in Varanasi. And Jean Renoir, his wife, and Rumer Gordon, the author who wrote the novel The River, they were all in Varanasi for the Christmas vacation. Somebody had said there is a dance performance in the society, and so they came to the Theosophical Society there. And then Jean Renoir wanted to see me and offered me a role in the film. That's how it happened.
And what was the role? What did you do in the film?
Well, the story was about the growing up of three girls, two of them British girls living in India, and one a girl of mixed blood. So that was the role which was given to me.
When I said end up, and you said, well, not exactly end up, is this something you feel you might have done more of? After all, you were trained in classical dance and performance and the arts.
No, I don't think I would have liked to continue to be in the film world because there are various aspects to it. For one thing, the irregularity, which would not have suited my aims in life or my way of living.
You know, this is we've about completed the 50th anniversary of India's independence.
Yes.
You've had a ringside view of the processes of independence and thereafter, and in some ways, what many people fear, the decline of that spiritual hope for India, of the resurgent India that would be this beacon of spirituality for the rest of the world. In many ways, that has not happened. Are you despairing about India?
Well, the whole world seems to be in a state of decline. We are more aware of it in India at present, but there is rising violence everywhere. Corruption is spreading in countries where there was never any corruption. The gap between the rich and the poor is increasing by leaps and bounds. The world is not in a healthy state. There is degeneration all round. But I don't despair, because I think that there is some intelligence or power behind everything, and millennia of evolution have culminated in this complex being which is the human being. From the microorganism, people like Fred Hoyle say there could not have been a series of changes in a direction which would have led to this. Statistically, it is impossible. So if there is a love, an intelligence, an energy, whatever you like to call it, which is guiding the whole thing, surely it will not all end in nothing, in disaster. Maybe temporarily set back and so on. So I think there is no reason to feel despair, but one feels saddened that humanity in general is so senseless. You know, we all know that this armament production can not do any good to the world, that it is causing misery to millions of people. It's all this chasing after money. Why are we so intent upon that? Why is it we are not able to cope with a problem like that? Humanity seems to be very clever in some ways and extraordinarily stupid in other ways, because we are not able even to face crucial questions.
Radhaji, thank you very much. This has been a great privilege. Thank you.